Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon on Pacific Time Zone. This is Rob Clark.
This is Roger Rabindere.
And welcome to the second week of Ask Apogee Live. Thank you all for tuning in. And this show, like we talked about last week, is all about the questions that are most asked on our Ask Apogee inbox. So if you have any questions for us, please ask them in the comments below. Or if you have questions later on, visit www.apogeedigital.com and either click on the Chat with an Apogee Expert button or on the Ask Apogee Expert button on the webpage. So the first question this week is going to be revolved around this beautiful new MacBook Pro.
Right.
We've got a lot of questions about the new MacBook Pro. And the first question that we have that's most common is, I've been looking at getting the new MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, but was interested in how to get my interface to connect with these new Type-C ports.
Right.
Will my interface work?
Well, indeed, we have completely certified all of our USB and Thunderbolt products with the new MacBook Pro. Of course, to connect up Apogee interfaces, you will need either the USB-A to Type-C or Thunderbolt 2 to Type-C connector. But once you've got the adapters, everything works perfectly as expected. You know, we've heard a lot about the Type-C connector. Apple is always at the forefront of progress. And maybe at first you have to ask questions, why did they change all the connectors? And that Type-C connector is actually really quite versatile. I like to call it a Type-C connector and avoid references to any data format, so USB, simply because the Type-C can do several different types of data formatting. You can use USB, HDMI for your display, even Thunderbolt 3 over that Type-C connection. It's helpful to think when you connect up a peripheral to the Type-C connection, what happens, there's actually a negotiation that goes on. And there's a communication between the peripheral and the port. The peripheral says, I can do this, I can do Thunderbolt 3. And then the port really transforms itself into a Thunderbolt 3 port, or if it's connecting to a display. So in fact, these Type-C ports really are the one port to rule them all, to paraphrase a little bit of Lord of the Rings. And that is really going to be incredibly flexible as we move forward.
Awesome. Yeah, I've actually picked up one of the new MacBook Pros myself. And I kind of enjoyed, you can charge it from any of the ports.
Right.
I've actually used that feature quite a bit, where it's just more convenient to have the charger on one side than on the other.
Right.
And one thing, actually, Roger, if you check out these adapters here. So, of course, any of the Thunderbolt adapters will have that Thunderbolt icon there. So you'll know that that's the Thunderbolt side going into the adapter there. And USB will have the little USB logo. So both of these work great. I use them all the time for Elements, and here we have a Duet. So
Duet, Symphony IO, all the way from Groove 1. All Apogee products have been certified completely.
Perfect. All right, well, the next question that people ask us quite a bit is, what's the difference between USB 2 and USB 3 in audio interfaces?
Right, and again, another question we get fairly often. The other question might be, why haven't you made a USB 3 audio interface? And here's a great analogy to think about the difference between USB 2 and 3. Imagine you're on a plane from Los Angeles to San Francisco. You could be on a small plane, 707, or a 747. You may be able to fly more passengers between each city, but it's going to take you about the same amount of time. And that's exactly the difference between USB 2 and 3. USB 3 allows you to transmit more channels back and forth, but the actual speed of that transfer and really the resultant latency is going to be the same. So with something like Duet, Quartet, even Ensemble, or any product that has multiple channels, there's really no advantage with using USB 3 with regard to latency. So USB 2 is completely sufficient for really anything but the largest track counts.
Great point. So, like we say, USB 2, ready to rock for all audio applications. And just another thing to talk about with this new MacBook Pro is, of course, it is faster than the previous generation as well. Just like all technology's been, over the past, few years, it just continues to evolve and get faster and faster. So with faster CPUs, you can run bigger sessions, run more plugins. You can do, much more than you could. And it's really amazing. Each year, we look at how much more you can do with the current technology. So, I'm just, as an example, running some pretty large sessions on this laptop, and it holds up beautifully. So newer, faster processors, a good plus as well.
And of course, the touch bar.
Of course, the touch bar. So the next question that we have is there a feature on the touch bar that can help me in my audio production?
There absolutely is. So with the very latest version of Logic that was released around NAMM towards the end of January, they actually added all sorts of touch bar features to correspond with many of their features in the new version of Logic. There's actually a piano keyboard if you really want to start triggering samples from the touch bar. But relevant to Apogee owners, they've actually brought their audio device control feature onto the touch bar. So if you're not familiar with audio device control, it's actually a Logic feature that allows you to control Apogee hardware input parameters like your mic gain, your input source, phantom power, right from your Logic channel strip. If you've ever actually used it, just from a workflow point of view, it's incredibly convenient. But now you actually have those audio device control settings there on the touch bar. So you'll just have to try it yourself to really see, because you probably can't see it very well. But here, there is the gain of the duet that I've got connected. Here I can choose my input, which input, the microphone, line, or instrument. And in fact, I've also got my fader for that channel strip. So when it comes to setting up your signal flow to your gain structure, here is my input gain, here is my input fader right from the touch bar. It makes it just incredibly convenient. It's right there under your fingertips.
Pretty cool stuff. For those of you who haven't checked it out, all Apogee interfaces, like Roger was mentioning, can be controlled from the mix window within Logic as well. Right. So just on that channel, if you have an Apogee interface connected, you can actually, like you said, phantom power, high pass filter, all of those sorts of things can be addressed directly from the mix window within your channel strip.
Right.
So fantastic little tip there.
Yeah.
So how about some other new features in the new version of Logic 10.3? So I like the new color scheme. It's a little brighter. It's a little flatter, a little bit more modern.
Right. Yeah. They added what are called track alternatives. Not alternative tracks.
Not alternative tracks.
Track alternatives is a feature that had been requested for quite a while, and it is now in Logic Pro at Pro 10, and it allows you to try out different takes and have alternative edits of a vocal, for example. It's a really useful feature.
Pretty cool stuff. I mean, there's so many great new updates. You can also, if you're using iOS devices and you're on GarageBand, there's some really cool new updates for GarageBand as well. So if you don't have GarageBand on your iPhone yet, download it. It's a fantastic app. And using iCloud, you can start your ideas on your iPhone, push it over to Logic, and finish it in Logic. They've added Alchemy, the super advanced synth. It sounds amazing. To the iPhone app. So there's in GarageBand on iPhone, they actually have the Alchemy synth. So pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah.
And of course, you can use that with all of our iOS compatible devices as well. So Apogee Jam, Apogee Mic, Apogee One, Apogee Duet, Quartet, plug into your iPhone to work with those sounds. So pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah.
One other cool thing about the iPhone that you can use with Logic is Logic Pro Remote. And that's a download that you can get for the iPhone, which will allow you to control your faders, your panning. You basically have an extension of your mixer on your iPhone.
Right. And indeed, they have come out with a new version of the iOS app that is super stable and goes with the new version of Logic. And again, it's one of those workflow things that once you try it, it's so amazingly convenient. I love playing drums, and my laptop's across the room, so I've got the Logic control on my iPhone. I can record enabled tracks. I can set the transport into record mode. I can even access my Apogee mic preamps from the iOS app. So those audio device controls are also available on the iOS app. So really, I have everything I need right there on my iPhone. And of course, it's all wireless. So it makes it just super convenient for the musician who's also recording himself, sort of the one-man band in his own studio.
Well, we've got an interesting question here about latency.
Okay.
So if you would, for just briefly, maybe explain to us latency through the computer when you're monitoring through the computer, maybe versus through the low latency mixer,
Right.
or how is latency calculated with an audio interface?
Right. And again, latency is probably one of our most frequently received questions. Really, digital audio is processing, and processing takes some time. So if you think about the time between your microphone going through an audio application and getting back to your headphones, that's the latency of your audio system. And all digital systems have some latency to them. When you start to add more plugins into the signal path, you increase the latency a little bit, or with some plugins, you actually increase the latency a great deal. Now, latency is also how fast of a time your app has to do processing. So there's something called the buffer. And that buffer, with the buffer, you're giving your app more time to make calculations. But then, on the other hand, that adds to latency. And so you have this kind of trade-off between low latency, so that you can perform kind of in a coherent way, and the power of your plugins. And I would say that that trade-off is really getting a lot easier these days, where plugins are so amazingly efficient, and with a Thunderbolt interface especially, you can really have a lot of power at a lower buffer setting and have lower latency. So the easiest way to really set up your system is where you are monitoring through your DAW.
Exactly. It makes it really easy too, because you can set up your headphone mixes as sends, as aux sends
Right.
to different buses, and it makes it really convenient, because then, let's say for example you're tracking a live band and you want to come back and maybe recall that session at a friend's house or go somewhere else. It's really nice, because if you have your
Right.
headphone routing kind of all made up there, you can just go to the next studio, pull up the same headphone mixes you had in your Logic session, or,
Right.
or whichever DAW you're using.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that
You're all set to go.
regardless what
Yeah.
system you're using.
Now, it probably is worth it just to mention a little bit about what a low latency mixer is. Certainly, perhaps if you're on a less powerful computer, and really I believe this is in the past where low latency mixers were more required, sort of where your computer was not as powerful, and so you had to set your buffer at a fairly high setting. And you would start to notice the delay. And it's sort of like being on a long distance call, where when you say something and there's this delay, it kind of disturbs your communication. And a higher latency kind of disturbs your musical performance. And so many audio interfaces, including our own, offer what is known as a low latency monitoring path, whereby there is a second mixer that is actually part of the hardware interface that mixes your input directly to your headphones. And in that way, that signal path avoids the DAW where kind of most latency is actually accumulated. Now, though on the plus side, you're able to reduce your latency. On the minus side, it gets to be a more complicated workflow. You've got two mixers to manage now. And to save your settings, you have to save these two settings and load them back up. And so, like everything, there's a trade-off.
Flexible options, however you want to work. Low latency mixer, set up your headphone monitoring through your workstation. Either way is a good way to go. But yeah, this new MacBook Pro, if you haven't checked one out yet, they're really cool computers, and like we said, perfectly compatible with all of the Apogee interfaces in our current lineup. So check those out. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week on Ask Apogee Live. If you have any additional questions, again, visit us at www.apogeedigital.com and click on the button on the bottom that says Chat with an Apogee Expert, or you can click on the button that says Ask Apogee and send us a message that way. My name is Rob.
My name is Roger.
And thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you back next week.